Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another fun and exciting core commerce webinar. This week's topic, of course, is going to be it's a pretty brief webinar today, but we're just going to touch on what PCI compliance is and kind of how it applies to you in the e-commerce world and how much of a pain in the butt it can be and how we can make it simpler for you here at CoreCommerce. I'm going to give you a couple more minutes to let everybody else join in, and then we'll get started. And like I said, this one is not going to be a very long webinar today, no big deal, but um, I'll take my time and go through this. And any questions you guys have, please type them in as we go, and happy to answer them, and we'll go from there. So I'll give everyone another minute or so to get in, and we'll get started. We will get started. And if anyone has any issues hearing me, please post that in the chat and let me know. Looks like I have everything set up correctly, and I'll go ahead and get started. So if you can hear me, let me know by just posting in the chat or something. So today's topic is compliance and what's called core payments, which is going to be our in-house payment processing that we do in-house now. So instead of configuring ourselves to work with all these different payment gateways, like you may have been seen in the past and used in the past, we do it all ourselves now, and we're expanding how that works every single day. And so today's the big thing that has shown us is getting into that game is we've learned a lot more about PCI compliance in general. Just let me back up and say that we've already done obviously a lot of research and have to go through our own PCI compliance at CoreCommerce every year. But when I say we learned a lot more about it, what I'm referring to is learned a lot more about how our customers, how you guys and girls have to go and do specific PCI compliance once you sign up for payment processing, whether it's through CorePayments or whether it was through somebody else that you deal with now. So I'll start by defining what PCI compliance essentially is from a high level. And some of you may know this already, but it's a standard that was created by Visa and MasterCard to, long story short, to ensure cardholder data is protected across the internet, right? So whether you're using a shopping cart software like CoreCommerce, or whether you're just accepting payments online, some other way that's not even e-commerce related, however you want to do it, think of whether you're using a point of sale system in your restaurant or anything like that. I mean, there's rules to ensure that the data that's being transferred from a customer's card to collect a payment is being securely handled and not incorrectly stored, and to give you the highest confidence that somebody's credit card data is as least likely as possible to get stolen or taken or something along those lines. So the rules for different types of industry and are different. So, e-commerce has its own set of rules. If you're just doing Moto, which is just, it has its own probably less strict rules. CoreCommerce as a company has specific rules it has to follow, being a host of data and storing certain pieces of data in its system. Whereas you being the merchant or the user of CoreCommerce, you don't have to worry about whether CoreCommerce itself can pass PCI compliance because we take care of that for you. You do have your own internal business PCI compliance, which depending on what you sell and whether you have a physical location or not, there's all these different little factors, of course, that fall into what you have to be compliant to do. So what you may have remembered when you let's say you sign up, whether it's CorePayments or you signed up with Card Connect or you did authorize.net, in any of those cases, at some point, you had to do some sort of PCI compliance for your business. And a lot of times, it's when you have to do it yourself, it gets very complicated if you don't know exactly how to answer everything. When you're using a platform like CoreCommerce, it's definitely required, not just for us, which of course we already do, but for you as well. So when you sign up for any type of merchant account, whether it's through CorePayments or not, you'll have to get your merchant ID. You'll have to go through some sort of PCI compliance, just so that the main processor, whether it's Elevon or First Data, whoever's actually processing the card behind the scenes at the end of the rabbit hole, knows that you're compliant and you're following these rules. So some of you may have noticed that you have to log in and answer a bunch of questions regarding PCI compliance, and if you kind of go even slightly down the wrong path, then it can make you do all these things that it might give you the impression are all required, but they're really not. For example, you can easily, and I've actually done this myself, helping merchants do this. So if you answer some of the questions incorrectly, it can be a situation where the tool you're using to do your compliance thinks that you're hosting CoreCommerce on your own web servers, which of course, obviously you're not, because we're hosting it all. But just by doing that, it opens you up to answering another 100 or 200 different questions about your hosting environment, which you don't have. And it's requiring you to do a scan of the CoreCommerce software. So anytime you're doing any type of PCI compliance, you'll never be required to scan the CoreCommerce software. If at any point you're being asked to do that, then something's wrong with the profile that you're filling out in the PCI tool itself, because because we already do all the scanning. We already have all of our paperwork from Visa and MasterCard that say we're compliant. Because you don't host it at all, there's no reason for you to have to pass any type of scan. So if you've ever been in that boat, definitely let us know. We can potentially help you resolve that and make sure that your business profile is configured in such a way that it knows that CoreCommerce is actually a third-party hosted environment, which doesn't require a scan. So we helped a few customers kind of get around that issue, where they were doing scans and thinking that they had to do scans, and the scans weren't passing because they weren't scanning the exact things that needed to be scanned. And come to find out, they didn't have to do a scan at all in the first place. And it literally took like a 2-minute call with somebody at the PCI manager's customer support to just get them to the whole beat to be 100% compliant. So long story short, there's a lot to it. And so we want to make sure that you don't have to deal with it unless you absolutely have to. And in this case, PCI compliance for any of your payment processing or for your business, related to how it relates to CoreCommerce, should always take anybody no more than 5 minutes. And If it does anything more than that, then we're telling it something wrong somewhere inside that PCI tool. So um, in any event, it is required. There are things you have to do for your business that are unrelated to CoreCommerce itself. That, as far as just business practices you do internally, some of them seem arbitrary, like making sure you're locking your computer every time you get up. I mean, it's questions like that, right? Or are you storing any data internally, like credit card data anywhere? Does anybody write credit card data down on a piece of paper and not shred it? So, I mean, questions like that it's kind of what it's going through, where, it's above and beyond or outside of the control of what CoreCommerce itself would do. So that's why you as the merchant have your own PCI compliance that you have to pass, and proving that CoreCommerce is compliant is just part of that, but that part is simple. So um, I've kind of half answered this just in me talking about here, but of course, CoreCommerce is PCI compliant. We go through that every year. We stay compliant. We are required, of course, to stay compliant. PCI level 1, which is the strictest level you can get to do it, which means the data we store is stored in a secure manner. We do not, as most of you probably already know, we do not store actual cardholder data in our system at all. We do what's called tokenized data for certain payment gateways, which means the payment processor or the gateway will tokenize a card. And in other words, give me some encrypted value that represents what that card is. And we'll store that value. Now, no one has any type of way or shape or form to decrypt what that value is and have any way to know what the real card is. Only the main gateway who generated the token knows what that token represents. And there's really no way to decrypt it. They just know, they have the data on their end that tells me what token represents what card, right? So all CoreCommerce does is store certain tokens. And then when somebody needs to collect a payment or we need to process a card, if you're using Card Connect, for example, you can store a card on file. And when you do that, we'll store a tokenized value of what that card represents. And anytime that customer wants to use that card to pay, then we will pass that token to Card Connect. Card Connect will then make a payment and so forth. And so by doing all that, we don't want to have to be responsible for storing hard card data directly in our system. And so that's the reason we do it that way. But as far as CoreCommerce itself being compliant, 100% every year, we go through it every year, spend thousands of dollars getting scans done and getting audits done. And it's all part of what we have to do. And we do it so that our customers, don't have to do all that stuff related to the CoreCommerce platform itself. And, I've touched on this a little bit, but PCI just becomes such a pain in the butt. It is for us every year. We're required to have to go through it, but there's all these little bitty things that we have to prove to the auditor that we do, and we do securely, and that make sure these pieces of data are being saved correctly, and these pieces of data are not being accessed by people who shouldn't be able to access them, and things like that. So there's tons of stuff that's going on, and we just want to try to make it as simple as possible for you when you have to do the bit of PCI compliance that you have to do just for your business in general. And which brings me to kind of the side topic of this is CorePayments. And if you haven't heard about CorePayments yet, please let me know. We'll certainly be in touch with you about it. You may have gotten some of the people on this webinar. I recognize some of the names on here. I'm sure some of you have already touched base or heard from Matthew. He does a lot of CorePayments calls. He reaches out to all of our existing customers about switching over to CorePayments from whatever processor you're using now. Some of you may have already switched, and you know what this does. Now, if you're interested in switching over to CorePayments away from your current processing that you use within your CoreCommerce store, you can go to that link you see right on the screen there, corecommerce.com/sign up, and you can fill out that pre-MPA that we have so we can work on getting you approved for a merchant ID. Definitely can do that. So what makes CorePayments better than what you might do today? Number one, it potentially it gives you one set of contacts, not only for when you have a shopping cart question, if you need to call our customer service team about CoreCommerce itself, or you have a question about how it works, or whatever the case may be. You can call the same customer support team if you have questions about core payments, about your payment processing, did something batch, or when does the money hit my bank account? You can call the same group of people instead of having, a Rolodex worth of people to call for every little bit and piece of your business, right? So that's one good benefit of it. Number two is we make the whole PCI piece of this easy. So every year, it is annual, right? So because it's annual for CoreCommerce, it's also annual for you. We can walk you through exactly how to do the PCI, and it literally takes 5 minutes if you answer the questions in the way that it wants you to. And so we can make sure that all of our core payments customers literally spend no more than 5 minutes dealing with their PCI questionnaire every year, and they're done with it. You don't even have to mess with it. It's good. And then, you just go through and do your own PCI compliance for your business, but the core commerce piece of it will take 5 minutes, as opposed to wondering why it's, taking me an hour to answer all these questions and get a scan and, do all those different things. And at the same time, core payments, because we control the pricing, it's very likely that we can give you a quote on what it would cost and how much it could save over the processing fees that you pay today. So for example, if you use Card Connect, or if you use First Data, or you use any other, like, even if it's PayPal or something like that, we can, if we have a couple of statements from you, we can get you a quote on what that's going to cost and save you some money that way too. So long story short is, it's definitely complicated as far as PCI compliance and how you deal with it, but it should not have to be that hard at all. And working with core payments definitely will make that process easier for you. So that's the end of what I had to say today. I appreciate everybody who's listened. And does anybody have any questions? Oh, Matthew, I see your comment. Yeah, thank you for that. We're glad to have you on board. Sure, there's another question. Okay, if nobody has any questions, I'll go ahead and end this off. There will be a recording of this that we'll post in case you want to come back and rewatch this again. But if anybody who's on here that is not a core payments member right now that's interested, feel free to get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to get you signed up immediately. Or if you want to quote, we'll do that as well, and look forward to serving you in the future. We appreciate it. Everybody have a good day.